Hey there, fourth graders. So we are continuing talking about angles, and today we're going to be learning about how to measure angles. So you guys can see right here on the screen, the tool that we use to measure angles is called a protractor, and this is what it looks like. Okay, they all look a little, sometimes they don't have like all of this with the inches and millimeters down on the bottom, but typically with a protractor you have angle measurements on the outside and then also angle measurements on the inside. Okay, so that is pretty common for a protractor. If this is a tool that you do not have at home, that's okay. You can still practice with measuring angles on the link that's on the top of the page where you found this video. And it is a virtual protractor practice. So it will give you a virtual protractor and it will give you angles, and you can practice measuring the angles that way. I would definitely recommend either practicing with an actual protractor or practicing with a virtual protractor, because that is going to be something that you're going to have to be able to do, is to read the protractor. The other thing I do want to mention is when you do have angle questions where you have to actually measure the angle on a test like FSA, the protractor is going to be given to you. So it will be a picture that will have the protractor and then the angle will be drawn under, like on top of it. And so you'll be able to use that protractor that's there. So it will be like printed right onto the paper for you. All right, so let's get into how we measure angles. Now, if you guys remember back to the last video, we talked about there's three main types of angles, really four main types of angles. We talked about an acute angle that's oh so acute, and that's an angle that's less than 90 degrees. We talked about a right angle that's just right, it's exactly 90 degrees. An obtuse angle is bigger than 90 degrees but smaller than 180 degrees, and then a straight angle is exactly 180 degrees. It's like a straight line. All right, and if you guys remember, I'm going to kind of draw this up here in the corner of the paper so we can have a reminder. All right, so acute angle, right, and then we have our right angle. Right angles a lot of times will have this little square in the corner of it. That's a right angle. Right, our obtuse angle, and then our straight angle. And an angle is two rays that meet at a vertex, okay? All right, there we go. So when it comes to measuring angles, you'll notice there's numbers on the inside of the protractor and there's numbers on the outside of the protractor. And this is the tricky part. You have to know which set of numbers to read. Okay, you may be thinking, well, Mrs. Long, I don't know how to know which set of numbers to read. Well, let's look at an example of an angle. I'm going to draw an angle. Okay, we're going to pretend that I'm drawing perfectly straight lines here. I'm drawing an angle. Before I take my protractor and set it on top of this angle, I want to look at my chart over here and decide, is this angle acute, right, obtuse, or straight? It is acute. This is an acute angle, all right? Remember, acute angles are less than 90 degrees. So my answer has to be a number that's less than 90 degrees for my angle, all right? There's my angle right there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my protractor, and you see this, all protractors have like a center line of some sort. Mine is an actual hole on mine. Sometimes it's just like a little notch on the protractor, but we want to line that up exactly on the vertex. And then we want to line the bottom line of the angle up exactly with that straight line at the bottom of the protractor. Okay, do you guys see how I did that? So it shouldn't be like this. It shouldn't be over here like that. It's got to be lined up exactly here and exactly there. All right. And then I look at my top line and I see, where does my top line go through? All right. I feel like, there we go. I moved it a little bit. There we go. Hold it still. All right. Where does my top line go through? Well, I can see it goes through the like 51. Right? It's just past the 50, which means it's 51. You see how these numbers are counting up. So this wouldn't be 69, right? These are going up. So that would be 51, or it goes through 129. Which one makes sense? 51 degrees or 129 degrees? I want you to think about that for a second. All right, this is an acute angle, which means it would be 51 degrees. It has to be the one that makes sense. 129 degrees doesn't make sense because this is an obtuse. If it were an obtuse angle, 129 degrees would make sense, but this is acute. Acute is a small angle that's less than 90 degrees. So remembering what these words mean is super important when it comes to measuring angles. The other part, and I forgot to say this at the beginning, the other part with reading the protractor is, remember I said the numbers count up on the inside and they count up this way on the outside. So you see where the 0 is. The 0 is this line that goes right there through the bottom. You always start with 0 and you count up. Okay, so if you're looking at the inside numbers, remember it's counting up from the right and going around to the left. If you're looking at the outside numbers, it's counting up from the left and going to the right. So if I end up right here on the outside numbers, okay, I'm looking at that and I see that it falls directly between 110 and 120. So it's 115, all right? I have to make sure that I'm really careful about that as I'm reading angles. Let's look at another example, all right? And really the best way to get better at measuring angles is to practice doing it yourself. So I'm going to give you just a couple of examples and then I want you to go to that website or pull out a protractor and measure angles in your math book, okay? Now again, my angles are a little squonky because I'm drawing them, but you'll just have to bear with me. All right, so again, I line up my vertex, I line up my 0 line. Oh, before I do that, I forgot to ask, what type of angle is this? Is this acute, right, obtuse, or straight? This is a big angle, right? This is an obtuse angle. So this one is going to be bigger than 90 degrees, but less than 180 degrees. Okay, so I'm going to line myself up now. Okay, there we go. All right. It looks like it's going through right about here. Do you guys see that? It goes right through here. Now, I'll add this here in a second. Okay, so I'm looking, and it's either right about 65, right? Or right about in between the 110 and the 120, which would make sense. Between 60 and 70, or between 110 and 120. This is an obtuse angle, so it's going to fall between 110 and 120. And it looks like here's 110, 111, 112, 113, 114, 115, 116, 117 degrees. So my angle measured 117 degrees, okay? Again, it's really important that you're making sure you get your protractor lined up. You line up the center point with the vertex of the angle, and you line up the 0 line with the bottom line of the angle. And then you use these measurements up at the top to measure your angle, thinking, is this obtuse, straight, acute, or right? Okay, you want to think, what type of angle is it before you even measure, so that you make sure you're reading the right set of lines. And then again, make sure that you're counting up the right way. So it's not a difficult thing to do, but there's a lot of things that you need to just double check to make sure that you're doing correctly, okay? So now what I want you to do is I want you to go practice measuring angles. Please click on that link that's up at the top of the page where this video was located, the Unit 7 page, because that is a virtual angle practice. So you can practice measuring angles with a protractor online, or if you have your own protractor, go around and measure angles. Use your math book and look at the pages in there and measure angles. Practice measuring those angles, because that's the way that you get better at it, okay? And think, always think, does my answer make sense? Don't just give an answer. Think if your answer makes sense, because if I said that this was a 65-degree angle, that doesn't make sense. This is an obtuse angle. It has to be bigger than 90. 65 is not bigger than 90, so that doesn't make sense. All right, so always think, does my answer make sense? As always, if you have any questions, let me know, and I'll see you guys in the next video.